This is the Conservative Czar, October 7th, 2015. I want to reiterate themes that I have given out before and talked about before, but to illustrate the real problems that we have in the Middle East with the Russian moves. And the take I'm going to take is entirely different than anybody else, except I have to admit Donald Trump. Uh, let's go back a little bit, and it's a very complicated subject, but I want to concentrate on one thing about it. We go back a little bit. We have the ill-fated Obama-Clinton foreign policy that promoted the Arab Spring, the uprisings in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and Syria in particular. There were others, but those are particular. And there was an Obama-Clinton foreign policy to promote these things. Remember, in Egypt, they turned their backs on a 40-year ally of the United States, Mubarak, allowing the Muslim Brotherhood to take over. Hardlined, near dictator Mubarak. We get the democracy of Muslim Brotherhood, and now we are so excited that we have the dictatorship back with El Sisi. So this is the trend that the Obama-Clinton foreign policy got us. It's an unmitigated disaster, and it caused the rise of ISIS. And there's no question about this. This idea they're pawning this off on Assad, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We'll get more into that later, but it's ridiculous that we're putting this on other people. It's a direct result of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy promoting the Arab Spring, which is an absolute disaster. So we have the rise of ISIS, and Obama's strategy in the beginning, I supported his slow move get into position to fight ISIS. But then he does nothing. He does absolutely nothing. The problem we have in fighting ISIS is that the effort we're making in air power is 1/10, 1/50th of what we need to influence things on the ground. And in addition, we don't have an army to support. And it gets really tangled up when we start talking about that, because who is there to support? There is nobody. There is nobody. There never was. It's a phony issue. And by the way, it's a phony issue. It brings up really dangerous tendencies in Marco Rubio, Carly Fiorina in particular, with their over-aggressive militaristic attitude when there is no solution. This mythical idea that we could go and support good guys, we couldn't. We did support good guys, and within a week of giving them arms, it was stolen by ISIS. That's how ISIS got going. We'd give arms and support to some rebels in Syria, and ISIS would go and take the arms. That's how they got rolling. So it's an absurd idea that we have it's an absurd idea that there are good people, and if only we support them, things will work out good in the Middle East. This is ridiculous. People, if anybody tells you this, you are listening to an idiot. You are listening to somebody that makes no sense. And that is Carly Fiorina, and that's Marco Rubio. They make no sense on this. None. Now we have the current situation where Obama put in place, in the beginning, I have no problems with him getting situated, but what was necessary was for him to not put troops on the ground, but to escalate the air war and to loosen the rules of engagement. What we have instead is that we will fly 10 sorties a day out into the vast wilderness of ISIS, and 10 sorties a day, 7 of them won't even drop bombs because the rules of engagement are so tough that it can't be done. If you don't escalate against ISIS, you are going to lose. And that's what's happening, especially initially. We are making no inroads, none, into fighting ISIS because our rules of engagement and our effort is so minuscule. All we have to do is increase the amount of air power we put into it and lessen the rules of engagement so that we're not so concerned mid-flight and there might be a civilian around. So what fills this vacuum of inactivity? Russia. Because Russia is doing what we should have been doing. I want to remind everybody about something here. When this all started, Arab Spring started, there was one person spoke and said, you are not capable of fighting this fight. It is going to be a disaster. You've got to not get into this, particularly in Syria, throwing out Assad. And that was Putin. Putin warned the United States that this was the wrong policy prior to ISIS, prior to all of this. And he was absolutely right. Absolutely right. So in this vacuum that we have in the world today, we have Russia doing the things that we should have done. Increase air power, lessen the rules of engagement, fly more sorties. He is damaging, he is having an effect in Syria, and it might have an effect in Iraq. That's another issue. So this was born out of a necessity by Assad, by Iraq, by Iran, by the Shia to defend themselves, to call in somebody that will act, and that is the Russians. Now here's the problem, and I am not critical of the Russians going into Syria. I'm not critical of Assad calling them in. I'm not critical of the Iraqi government calling them in, because the United States has done nothing to help them. Nothing. So, but the issue here is, and the great, great, great danger that is present here today, is a conflict between Russia and the United States. And the potential is great. It is really significant. And this is a potential point of conflict that is a powder keg that could blow up, literally blow up. And so we have to take every single possible precaution, the Russians do, and the United States, that this doesn't happen. And what that means is that the United States needs to step back. The United States, as Donald Trump says, is let Russia take care of Syria, and if we're going to do anything, we'll do it in Iraq, but we're not going to do anything in Iraq. That's why you get the Iraqi government asking the Russians to come in on their side, because they see in Syria the effectiveness of the Russian air power and the change in the rules of engagement. It is effective. The Russians, Assad army, Hezbollah, is going to drive ISIS back. I guarantee you they're going to have success. This is not a quagmire like Afghanistan. This is going to be successful because they have laid the groundwork here for a successful venture. The problem is the United States, with absolutely no justification at all, is getting its back up to try to limit the Russians' rules of engagement. It's a recipe for disaster. And another potential powder keg here is this idea that the constant harping about the lack of courage on the part of Obama will cause Obama at some point to his manhood is being challenged. He's going to draw a line in the sand. Now remember, he has drawn many lines, hasn't followed through on one. Because of all the pressure, he might draw a line and follow through on it, and we have a world war. Obama's strategy, the Trump strategy, is the correct strategy. Back away. Now we have problems. We have two giant problems that we've created for ourselves. But they're problems, and they're real. One is the Kurds. The Kurds have been loyal to the United States and supported the United States on this entire conflict. The other problem is almost exactly the same, except that it goes back 70 years, and that is Israel. Same point. Israel is an ally of the United States, has supported us time and time again. We must support Israel. and we must support the Kurds. The Kurds are the real immediate problem. The Israelis, I believe, will make a deal with the Russians when this is all said and done that will satisfy them. But the Kurds are a real problem. The Kurds are entrenched in northern Syria, and they're entrenched in northern Iraq. The government of Iraq wants the Kurds gone. I'm telling you, I know that you don't get that, but and it hasn't been talked about at all. But what we have in Iraq today is an autonomous state, Kurdistan, tied to the Iraqi government. The Iraqi government has little control over Kurdistan, but they want control. Iran, Baghdad wants control of northern Iraq, and that's a huge point that changes a lot of things. And if there's and that has to be protected, and likewise the Kurds in northern Syria, but they're in a different situation. They must reach an agreement with Assad. They must surrender. And part of a deal that can be carved here is that we agree that Assad retakes power in Syria. We agree, and the Russians on the table to protect the Kurds in northern Syria. Certain things will be done, and we also agree that Kurdistan is an autonomous state. And if we can do that in a broad agreement, that's the best thing we can get. The best thing we can get. This is the Conservative Czar. See you next time. It's way too long.